have a theory that I wanted to test out on you because it came up in a conversation with someone yesterday, and it was already something I was thinking about, and I want to see what you think. I think that August is the second new year. I mean, think about it, right? January comes, what do? We get the fresh planner, we set the goals, we make our resolutions. Maybe you choose a word of the year. I was just sharing today about the Name the Year journal that's helped me with that. We think about what we want the year to look like and who we want to become, right? And where we want to be by the end of the year. And then what happens? Well, everyone starts off really strong in January. Think about those parking lots for the gym, right? They're always full in the month of January. And then January becomes February. And then spring gets busy. And then summer arrives. And we tend to let go of those routines. Maybe the schedules change, the trips happen, the kids or grandkids are home, and suddenly here we are in August. But I really think that August maybe gives us something really interesting. Instead of saying, oh my goodness, I'm behind, it's already August, and then feel like we have to rush into the last few months of the year, what if we actually paused and saw August as something that's more of like a new beginning, kind of like a fresh start, not because we're starting another calendar year, but because really we're entering another season. And I always say it doesn't just have to be with what's on the calendar. I know that many of us, if you're in business, you're probably thinking about, well, Q4 doesn't start until October 1st. But really, we're at this time right now, this pivot time, where summer is probably coming to an end or at least winding down. Maybe school is starting up because maybe you have kids or grandkids in school, or maybe you're a teacher, or maybe not. It just feels like schedules are shifting. Those things at church that were on break for the summer are starting to come back again. You're feeling like, okay, I've been out of routine for a while and maybe I need to come back to that because fall's around the corner. And before we know it, right, what happens? It feels like we're already going to be talking about Thanksgiving and Christmas. I was just telling someone earlier today, if you walk into Hobby Lobby lately, apparently Christmas was like 6 weeks ago. And even when you think about like the back to school stuff, that's all been out since, I don't know, right after the 4th of July. But here's what I don't want for us. I don't want us to get to November or December and then look back on another season and say, where did the time go? And I also think it's not probably healthy for us to treat August like January 2.0, another chance to set more goals and get more disciplined and set the bar higher and try harder and push a little farther, because I believe that faithful stewardship really starts somewhere different. Like, let's go back and think about what happened at the beginning of the year, right? In January, the goal setting often thinks about and focuses on what do I want to accomplish this year? But when we are approaching this from the place of stewardship, we're starting to not just say what's on my agenda, but what is his assignment? Like, Lord, what are you entrusting to me this year? Do you hear the difference in that starting point from what do I want to get done this year and, where do I want to be by the end of the year, to saying, Lord, what are you entrusting to me now? And so today I want to talk about how we can use August right now. Here we are smack dab almost in the middle of August as kind of a second new year, not to set 27 new goals, not to feel bad about the ones you set back in January that maybe you haven't made a whole lot of progress on, or you kind of left somewhere along by the way, not to feel like I have to start over, but really just more as a pause. And an intentional pause, because we all know that the pace can tend to pick up from this time through the end of the year. And so really pausing to ask, what is this next season actually for, right? Like, how many times do we actually pause and ask that question before we just let the calendar fill up with everything? And that question is exactly why I'm going to be doing something next Tuesday for members of the Stewardship Circle called the Fall Stewardship Circle Retreat. And we are literally, before our calendar starts piling up, going to push pause, right? We're going to push that pause before the pace picks up so that we can ask that question, what is it time for as I step into this fall season, and really start making some key decisions around what's going to get our yes and what isn't, and how to protect that. Because we can say one thing in our head or out of our mouth or even on paper, but it's about what happens when this meets real life. So if you're already a paid member of the Stewardship Circle, say hi in the chat. In fact, you know what? How about this? Drop your favorite fall emoji in the comments because you're already invited. You already get a spot there. It's included in your membership. We're going to be going together live next Tuesday, stepping away from all the things that we think we have to jump right back into so that we can pray, we can think, we can discern, make some decisions, start creating a faithful plan for the season ahead instead of feeling like we're reacting to all of it. And did you notice what I said there? We're going to discern before we plan, right? Like this ties into everything that I'm talking about here on Substack is that our right theology, what we believe and think about our time and the one who gave it to us, is what leads to a right methodology, what we actually do with it. Because if I believe that my time actually belongs to him, and it's this gift that he's entrusted to me, then I don't begin by asking, like, how much can I fit into fall? Right? I actually begin by asking, what is actually mine to faithfully steward? And when I say mine, again, it's this partnership that we're doing with the Lord, not over here on my own, or Lord, please give me the rubber stamp on my plan and I'm off and running. So if you're not inside the stewardship circle yet, hang with me today. I'm going to tell you more as we go. But I know the more women I'm talking to, not only on Substack, but also in other places, they're like, Lissa, this is exactly what I need, because so often fall feels like it's that breakneck pace that continues through the end of the year. So we don't have to wait till January in order to, decide what it's going to be time for. I think August can be the time that we do that. So if you're already a free subscriber, I want to encourage you, go ahead and click to upgrade to annual. That way you can come into the stewardship circle and you can join us next Tuesday when we do this intentional retreat to really look at what is it time for this fall. So I'm glad some of you are joining on. So as you're coming in, tell me what you're looking forward to about fall, because I think there's so many fun things that happen in this month. It's a beautiful time of year, and there is a freshness to coming back, as we've gotten kind of lulled into just comfort zones. And so now it's time to say, okay, what really matters between now and the end of the year? I think that can be a healthy motivation when we're coming from a place of stewardship, not accomplishment. Okay, so let's talk about why August matters, because it's not even fall yet. And if you're living anywhere, in most of the places that I've been, it doesn't even feel like fall outside or look like it's coming anytime soon. But August is really what's setting us up for everything that's going to be happening for the rest of this year. So I want to encourage you, don't write off the rest of the year. Okay, there's something that happens. I know this happened for me as I talk to a lot of women. When January doesn't go exactly as planned, or when you start off strong and then somewhere between January and August, things start falling off, what do? We quietly start writing off the year, right? Yes, maybe you had goals. Maybe you had intentions or resolutions or whatever, like just things that you said, this is the year for. Maybe you had things you wanted to change or things you wanted to accomplish or get to or finally take care of, or, maybe there are some really deep things that you believe that God is inviting you to do. And now it's August and it hasn't happened. Or maybe it's happened a little bit, right? What was something, for those of you on live, what was something back in January that you really felt like this is something that I want to see move forward this year? I would love to hear what that is, right? And it doesn't matter if you have made all the progress in the world and checked it off your box, or just a little bit or somewhere in between. What is one of those things that was on your heart when you were starting the new year? That maybe at this time of year can be tempting to say, well, maybe next year. And I always like to say, don't wait till January 1st, right? Like there's still a lot of year left. Yes, we're past the halfway part, but God doesn't need January 1st to begin something new, right? Like, again, a calendar helps us pay attention to what time it is, but a calendar does not dictate whether or not it's too late or we're behind, or we should have been further on something than we actually are right now. Maybe right now, maybe you're not supposed to resurrect a January goal. How many of you have grown? You are becoming a different person, right? And you are not the same person that you were back in January. And so maybe if we were sitting down and having this conversation back 8 months ago, you would have said, this is what it's time for. But now a lot of things have happened. The Lord's been stirring some things in your heart. You've been maybe responding to the needs and the requests around you. And maybe you're seeing something different than you would have back then. So maybe it's not about like shaming ourselves or feeling bad for what we haven't done that we said we were going to do back in January 1st. Guess what? We didn't know exactly where we're going to be this time in the year. So if you did set goals or resolutions, or this is the year that fill in the blank, then that was probably just based on the knowledge and wisdom you had at the time, right? And so, what I want us to ask, I think this is just a great time to pause and say, okay, what is God entrusting to me right now? Like, what is it time for right now? That's a very different question because you're not the same person that you were in January. Sure, like your family may be in the same place, or maybe it's changed. Your business or work may be in the same place, or maybe it's grown. Your health may be in the same place, or maybe it's not. Maybe you feel like your capacity looks different, or your responsibilities are not what you had back then, or relationships or something is needing something different from you. Maybe something that you thought was important back in January, maybe it isn't even important anymore. And maybe it wasn't even on your radar in January. I know Kathy is on here. Kathy was just sharing with us earlier today about how much God has been stirring in her heart just in the last couple of months, and really even in the last month. So if Kathy would have sat down and answered this question back in January, it would have been very, very different, which is why it's so important that we take time to pause and ask the question, what is it that God is entrusting to me? What is it that God is inviting me to steward right now? And that is why I don't want you just to simply pull out those January goals and say, how do I finally get this done? Maybe that thing does still matter. Maybe that thing really is where you're supposed to be focusing your time, but maybe it's not, right? And that's why we pause and we ask those questions, because sometimes it is that bringing us back to that thing that the Lord laid on our heart 8 months ago. And sometimes there's something new or a fresh take on it or a little different piece of it that maybe we weren't anticipating back then. So if you did write them down, maybe you wrote them down at the beginning of your planner, maybe you have them in a journal, I do encourage you in the month of August, whether you go grab that right now or whether you do that in the next week or two, like maybe look back at, hey, what was I saying I thought it was time for this year in 2026? And then don't just make yourself have to go back to that. Like, let that be maybe something that kind of brings you back to what God was stirring back then, but then come and say, okay, Lord, what are you saying now? What are you entrusting to me now? What is it time for now? Where you have me at this place, right? Because stewardship often, well, it actually needs to assume something really important. I am not the owner of my time. Who gives me an amen for that, right? Kind of relieves a little bit of responsibility. I am not the owner. I'm the steward of this, right? This doesn't all belong to me and it's not all on me. And yet there's this healthy sense of what am I doing with it? Because it is this precious gift. It is this thing that God has entrusted to me that is the very vehicle in order to do the thing that he's called me to. And I really think maybe that's what changes the goal, that it's not about how much, what am I accomplishing, right? And feeling good about getting done in the last part of the year, but how am I being faithful? In fact, I'm working on a podcast episode and an article for next week that's going to be looking at how do we evaluate our day? Are we looking for a day that's productive? Or are we looking for a day that's faithful? And I think we can ask the same question around a season or a year, right? Was I just looking to be productive and hit these milestones or these targets? Or as I look at seeking to be faithful, right? As James talks about making plans and saying, I think these are the things I'm going to do if the Lord wills, right? But being faithful to what it is that we've been given. So I would love to hear from those of you guys who are on live. And if you're watching the replay, find a way to be able to respond to this. If you had to describe the season that you're entering as we're going into fall in one word, what would it be? How would you describe the season that we are about to enter as August becomes September, becomes October, November, December? What would be a word that might describe what you're going into? Discipleship. I love that, right? Because that's connected to what the Lord is doing there. So good. Anyone else who's on live, go ahead and drop that there. And the rest of you who are listening, I want you to think about what would be a word that describes what I'm going into. And while you're thinking about that, this is exactly why, for those of you who are just joining us live, we are doing a retreat on Tuesday, because sometimes we don't need another planner. We don't need another list. We don't need someone saying, it's almost Q4, you need to, get on track with your goals. We just, sometimes I think we need to get far away from the noise and all the hustle and bustle that we know is about to come and just be able to see clearly and hear clearly. And sometimes We need enough quiet to hear something besides urgency. How many of us are responding to tyranny of the urgent all day long, right? Because, like I call it, the rings, dings, and pings are always coming up and keeping us reacting all day long. And so next week, those of you who are already members as annual subscribers of the Stewardship Circle, we're going to decompress, right? Because that's what a good retreat does. It helps us kind of come down from maybe that heightened place of where we are. We're going to discern, what is it time for? What are the things that God is entrusting to me? What is he putting on my heart? Where is he leading me over the next couple of months as we finish out the year? We're going to decide, because there probably are a lot of things you could do, right? So let's make some decisions around what you will do. And then we're going to design. Because as we all know from January 1st, goals, resolutions, whatever you want to call it, this is the year I'm going to fill in the blank. Just because we say it doesn't mean we actually do it and follow through, right, until the end. And so we're going to push pause next Tuesday and look at the season that you're leaving, and then look at the one that we're entering into. And we're going to discern, like, what is this next season for, right? As I look at the last 4 months of the year, what is it that deserves my yes? And I'm going to help you choose one thing that you feel intentionally led to move forward this fall. Not because productivity says you need another goal, but because discernment is what helps us recognize this is what it's time for. And then we're going to design a realistic plan for, okay, how do I actually live this out? Not an imaginary plan, not like this would be a someday plan or nice to have or whatever, like what will actually work in real life, right? Around if you've got, people back in school or work or business or ministry or family or travel or health things that you're dealing with. Hello, the holidays, right? We all know they're coming. Again, just go to Hobby Lobby this time of year and you will already feel like they're upon us and you're somehow behind. Don't worry, you're not. We still have time, right? We're also going to need rest probably in this next season, some margin for the things that we don't know are coming, right? So when you join us next week for this, you're going to leave with your fall yes filter, right? We're going to know, how do I know what's going to get my yes this fall and what's not? You're going to have that one thing focus, and then we're going to start building out your simple plan so you can faithfully start moving it forward. So if you're like, oh, that sounds amazing, how do I get there? First of all, if you're already a paid Stewardship Circle member, then hello, you already have a ticket. I love it. So you don't have to do anything else. If you're a free subscriber right now and you want to come, then you just need to click the subscribe link and upgrade to paid and become an annual member. And here's what I especially love about annual, because when you're annual, right, you are going to continue to get to steward time with us. And I always say change takes time, pun fully intended. And each month we're going to have an intensive where we push pause and we really look a little bit deeper at some area of our time and how we're approaching it, and give you some tools, help you make some decisions, have some tools to be able to actually walk that out in your real life. And annual people, you get access to those replays. Okay, so now this becomes something you can return to when you have a new season, right? When fall turns to winter, when we start walking into a new year, or just when you have some kind of a season in your life, right? Something is changing. So later on, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what's going on inside the Stewardship Circle. But here's the thing you need to know. The annual membership is actually less than the retreat replay is going to be. Okay. And you don't just get the retreat, you also get the Faithful Week Framework, which is a resource to help you build a week around what matters most, to know what are my oranges and where do they fit. And then you're going to get to come to each of our monthly Faithful Living intensives, where we're going to be building out these field guides to help you put the biblical stewardship into practice. Okay. And when we do that, inside the Stewardship Circle, this is the place that we bring real life questions. This is the place that we go, what do I do with this? And how do I know if this is mine to carry? And where does this belong? And what do I do when it feels like I'm behind where I think I should be? Whoever feels that, right? And what is it time for now? So if you are not already a subscriber, make sure that you go ahead and click the link so that you can do that and you can join us next week when we do our fall Stewardship Circle retreat. All right, let's talk about this. I want you to start thinking about your fall before we even get there, okay? Because if we don't, here's what I found to be true. Tell me if this has been true for you. Fall will fill itself if you let it. Has anyone ever found that fall fills itself if you let it, right? Nobody wakes up and says, you know what I'd really love? I would really love for the next 4 months to be completely overwhelming. But it happens. And how does it happen? One little yes at a time, right? That activity at church starts back up. Maybe the school schedule or sports schedule starts up. Maybe work ramps back up. Maybe someone asks if you can step into a new position. I actually got that request yesterday, and I'm starting to explore, what does this involve and how does this fit with the season that I'm in and what I know the Lord is calling me to move forward over the next few months. Yes, there are going to be opportunities. Yes, there are going to be unexpected trips or projects or something that the kids or the neighbor or your husband wants you to do. And then suddenly we're staring at November thinking, wait, how is it already Thanksgiving? Right? And then we know right behind that is Christmas, and all of a sudden we're into a new year. And that's why a pause really matters, because there's a big difference between asking, how am I going to fit all this in? And does all of this belong? How freeing would that feel to be able to ask the question, does all of this belong? Or do we just seem to kind of keep piling everything up on our plate or on our calendar and just say, well, I guess I'll figure it out? And as I was talking with some women earlier this week, one of the things that rose up in that conversation was oftentimes the things that then get pushed out are the things that are taking care of you, which is just as important, because otherwise you're not going to be able to show up to do the things that God has called you to do. So here's the difference between time management. Time management says, can I fit this into my calendar? Stewardship asks, is this mine to take on, and is it mine for now? And really, does it belong in this season? And this is something that I love when we think about what season of life we're in. Then that helps us to discern whether or not this is something that fits with the things that we know already are getting our yeses or need to get our yeses. And it may be that maybe in a past season, this was something that was really mattered and you definitely need to have on your plate. But over time, sometimes those things change. It could just simply be because you were younger and had more energy and now you're older. Or, when you had kids at home, maybe things looked one way, but now that you have an empty nest, it looks a different way. Or maybe before your diagnosis, you were able to take on more and now you have to be really careful about that. So I think knowing what season we're in is going to be really, really important. Asking, does this belong? And this is a completely different way to make decisions. Do you hear this, right? I think so many things happen by default, right? We just let all these things pile up on our to-do list or in our calendar, and we're not actually discerning, does it belong in this season? Because if our time truly does belong to God, I love using my little jar as like, okay, here's my day, right? I can let it fill up with all the Skittles, all the little things that keep wanting to fill it. Or I can focus on the oranges. Now I know this is a peach right now because I didn't have an orange to grab, but right, if I truly believe my time belongs to God, then my calendar isn't simply a container I fill however I want, right? This is where we, from our relationship with the author of time, start by saying, okay, Lord, what have you entrusted to me? And this is why this conversation keeps coming back to a right theology, right? What I believe, not only about time, but also the one who gave it to me, is going to lead to a right methodology, what I do with it. When we believe we have to control it, what do? We build systems around squeezing and maximizing, right? But if we believe that time is something entrusted to us, then we build rhythms around discernment and faithfulness. So the question isn't, how much can I squeeze into the time I have, but what actually has been entrusted to me in this season, right? And so that's why that's so important. And one of the things we're going to be talking through at the retreat is your fall yes filter. We're not going to build all that out today, right? That's part of what we're doing on Tuesday, but I want you to start noticing something. When you say yes, what happens? When you say yes, what happens? Well, number one, it's probably going to cost you time. It may cost attention. Now you've got something else on your mind. It may require energy. It may need to be, okay, now I'm thinking about my capacity. Sometimes it's going to cost some kind of money or resource. When every yes to one thing is at least in some way a no, or is going to affect something else. So before the invitations and opportunities and obligations start arriving, what if you already knew what deserved your yes? Like when I got on that phone call today, because I got the text yesterday saying, would you consider this opportunity? I didn't immediately say no, because it wasn't like it was one of those blatant things that I knew for sure, no way is this going to fit. So first thing I did is I went back to, what do I know that this season is already deserving of my yes? And then from that place, right? I asked questions. I listened. I talked with the people who've been fulfilling this role over the past couple of years. And now I can discern, okay, does this fit? So I would love to hear, if those of you who are on live, and if you're listening to the replay, I want you to think about this. What is something that you already know is coming this fall? Okay, something that you already know is coming this fall, whether it's an opportunity, maybe it's something that you've kind of always done, or you know somebody's going to ask you to be doing. What is something that you already know is coming this fall? Maybe it's already kind of started coming in. Maybe it hasn't picked up yet, and that's maybe more into September, October. But what is something that is coming this fall? And it could be something like, I'm going to be traveling, or I have this project that I'm working on for my business, or this ministry, we have this event coming up. Or maybe you're even starting to think about the holidays and where are we going to spend Thanksgiving, Christmas? Am I hosting? Am I traveling? And while you start thinking about those things, I encourage you, if you're on live, drop those in the chat. If you're listening to this replay, start writing some of those things down, the things that you anticipate are going to be coming. And instead of just saying, okay, how am I going to fit this in? Even if it's something that you've said yes to every fall up till now, I want you to start asking, does this belong in this season? Does this belong in this season? And is this coming from my agenda or somebody else's agenda? Or is this coming from God's assignment? Is this something that's directly connected to what he has put in front of me, where he's leading me? Right? And when we stop and ask that question, then this is how we don't just start showing up and saying yes to every single thing that comes in, which is why we're going to start putting together, what does that fall yes filter look like when we do the Fall Stewardship Circle retreat next week? Because I want you to have some really tangible tools for when those things come in. Because who here feels like there's always someone or something that would love your time, right? And probably for good reason. They always say, like, find somebody who's knows how to get things done because they will get it done, right? So if you're that person that people are coming to, there's probably a good reason for that, right? Or if you're the person who's noticing all the needs around you, that's probably because the Lord has given you a heart that notices those things. Okay. But when we come together on the Fall Stewardship Circle retreat next Tuesday, this is not just another Zoom where Liz is going to talk. Those of you who've been with me, you're going to do the work. Like, I actually like to ask questions and have you write things, ideally, like with your own hand. So that way you're starting to not only get things out of your head, but get them down on paper and start seeing them. And then by seeing them, we can start making decisions about them. And by the time we're done next Tuesday, I want you to be able to say, I know what this fall is for. I know what deserves my yes and what doesn't. I know what my one thing is that I am being called to faithfully move forward. And I know how I'm going to faithfully move it forward, even when I'm in real life, right? And maybe, there are a lot of other requests and demands that are coming my way. That's going to be the outcome, not setting more goals for the fall, although that's not a bad thing. Not making a pretty calendar or figuring out how to be more productive. Like, I want you to leave our Fall Stewardship Retreat with confidence, right? Confidence and maybe conviction that your plans reflect what God has entrusted to you in this season. And yes, one of the things that I always do is say, okay, let's account for real life. So if you already know you're going to be traveling in September, we're going to make sure that we account for that. If you already know that October is going to be Netzo, or you're going to be hosting Thanksgiving, or you're, like, things tend to change, around certain times of the year, then we are going to build around that and still leave a little margin for the things that we can't possibly know today, right? Because when we plan, it's not about us trying to control fall. It's about us saying, how can I faithfully enter this and steward the time that's in front of me? Now, that being said, I always say, make plans in pencil with a big pink eraser nearby, because God has a way of changing things. And sometimes life happens and, we need to rework the plan. But there's something about already knowing before we're heading into a season versus feeling like we're reacting and it's all just happening to us. How many of you have had a season just happen to you, or it feels like it just happens to you? And I wonder if you could trace back and say, did I pause before I entered that season? Now, sometimes we have a shift in season that we're not anticipating, and so we don't always have that opportunity beforehand. But when we notice that, that's a great time to pause. But for sure, when we're coming from, where maybe things look a little bit more summer-ish, a little bit more relaxed, maybe there's a different kind of, routine and things like that are going on, maybe different responsibilities and entering into a new season like fall, that's when we want to push pause. So if you're already a paid subscriber, hello, you're in the stewardship circle. So welcome. You get to join us next week. You're going to get access to the replay. So even if you can't join us during the time that we'll be live, I will make sure that you get the field guide so that way you can work through everything with the recording. But if you are currently a free subscriber and you're like, okay, wow, I don't think I've ever really paused intentionally to do something like this before I jump into fall, then I would encourage you, click the subscribe link and choose annual, because we're gonna work through this next week. And I have a feeling this is going to make the rest of this year look a little bit different. Okay, but I want to warn you about something. Well, let me just say this. We're not going to pick 10 things. We're going to discern one. Who has a tendency to add up all the things, right, that you think you can do, and then we have these high expectations of how much we're going to accomplish in the last 2 months of the year? Here's where I think we tend to get ourselves in trouble, especially if there's a fresh start, because what happens? Whether it's January, whether it's August, we get inspired. And then we decide, okay, this is the fall that I'm going to get healthy or organize that closet or grow the business or promote the ministry or redo my morning routine or read 12 books and get caught up in all those pictures or redo the budget. And then what happens 3 weeks later, right? We're just back into what everyday life looked like, and we haven't really moved anything very far. That's why part of what we need to do as stewards is choosing one thing. Right now, I want to be really, really careful here, because this is not pick your biggest Q4 goal and we're going to start it early. It's not what would make you feel most productive or accomplished. It's not what would look most impressive by December. It's not what did I say I was going to do back in January and I have to finish this now. We're going to pause and re-ask the question, right? What is it time for? And your one thing is something that I really want you to discern, not just something you decide because it sounds good or because someone else thinks that it sounds good. Because the goal is not just really, okay, I've checked this off. It's faithfully moving something forward, which is why we have to ask questions like, what is it that keeps coming back to my attention? Or what has God actually given me that I want to give some more intentional focus to? And thinking about, if I faithfully moved this forward in this season, what difference would it make? Maybe it is in your health. I've been talking to so many women lately who rest right now is really a key thing. And when we keep pushing the envelope, when we keep, burning the candle at both ends, when we are not taking time to rest or to move our body or to hydrate or whatever that is, right, then we pay the consequences for it. So maybe it's your health. Maybe it's a project you've been putting off or something you've been meaning to get to, right? Maybe it's a rhythm that you want to create with your family, or making progress in something that it's been on your heart for a while. Maybe it's your business. I know some of the women I work with, they have ministries, or they're taking care of their home or the people that are in their home, or they're really wanting to be intentional with their spiritual life, or maybe it's releasing something, right? I'm not going to decide that for you when we get together next Tuesday. I want to help you discern it. And that's really different, because we're not trying to just be impressive, right? We're trying to be faithful. And we're going to always keep coming back to the question. You're going to hear it out of my mouth a bazillion times. So sorry, not sorry if you're in my world. But the question that we're always going to come back to is, what is it time for? Now, if you already know what your one thing might be, I would love to hear. Drop it in the comments. Drop it in the chat around wherever you are here. And if you don't know, that's okay, right? Because today is Thursday. So we've got a few days before we come. And I would encourage you over the next couple of days, start thinking about, what could that be? What could it be that the Lord would want me to focus on? Doesn't mean we don't do anything else, but something that's going to get some intentional time and focus to move forward, right? And thinking about the impact that that's going to have. Now, the beauty of this is that we don't do it by ourselves, right? Yes, you could push pause. You could go into your bedroom or into your prayer closet or into your favorite chair, whatever your spot is, and you could ask some of these questions and write some things down. But there's something that happens about when you get together in a room, even a virtual room, right? With other Christian women who are also saying, yeah, I don't want to drift into another season. I want to seek God before I fill up my calendar. I want to discern before I decide. I want to stop just saying yes to everything and then saying, oh my goodness, what did I do? I want to start making wise decisions about what gets my time. I want to start seeking the Lord for what is it time for? I want to faithfully steward what he's entrusted to me. Like I want to reclaim my Sabbath on Sundays. I love that one, right? That's the kind of community we're building inside the stewardship circle. And so Debbie, that's a great example because that number one is something that scripture talks about quite frequently. And it's something that, we can be doing in community because it's hard to practice a different way of living when every voice around you is saying, do more and hurry and go faster and keep up and just fit it in and make it happen and, put on the smile and just add it to the list. Like, what would it look like if you had some different voices around you? Like other women who were also asking, what has God entrusted to you? Or what matters in this season? Or is that really yours? Or who put that on your plate, right? Who said that it was time for that? I think sometimes we need each other to help us ask those questions. What is it time for? Right? And we need time to be able to ask those questions and to listen to what the answer is, because otherwise, like we said, our fall is going to fill up. So if you're already a member of the Stewardship Circle, you're already a paid annual subscriber, then let me know if you're coming on Tuesday. Give me a fall emoji or some kind of excitement if you're planning to be there. It's going to be happening next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central, right? And you're going to be in a room with other people who are also seeking to do the similar thing, right? Which is what's going to make such a difference. There's statistics that are saying if you think about something and that you want to do, 10% chance it happens. When you write it down, it's up to 42% chance that it happens. Yay, I love that fall emoji. When you are starting to share it with other people, now you're up to 76% chance that it's happening. And when you get weekly accountability, here's where we take it up into the 90, 95% chance of that thing happening, right? Because we're not just saying, this is what I want, and then not having the follow through. So if you are not inside the Stewardship Circle yet, then like before we end, let's make sure we fix that, right? So click on the subscribe link, choose paid. You're going to notice there's definitely a huge benefit to being an annual. And I did that on purpose because change takes time, right? And so we want to be committed to what is moving forward. And you're right, Debbie, accountability is huge, right? But if nobody knows what it is that we're moving towards, then it's really easy. What happens when we don't have accountability? I find for me, either like I cut corners, I let myself off the hook, I make excuses, I quietly quit, or how about like we never even start? Maybe go back and, not in a shaming, judging way, but I think Debbie brought something up really important. Go back and look at the things that you said at the beginning of the year that you wanted to see happen and ask, did I have accountability around that? Did I have a plan around that? Did I really feel like this was something that the Lord was calling me to? Because the combination of those three things is what's really, really powerful. And like I said, it's not about just how do we get one more thing done or feel good when we finish the year. It's what's the Lord asking me to move forward this season? What is it time for? Right? And how am I going to be intentionally moving towards that? And that's what we're doing inside the Stewardship Circle. And so every single month we are going to be coming together and taking time to look at different areas of our life, business, ministry, and how in a busy world, we show up as women who are really intentional with our time because we know it's this gift from the author of time. So before we go, I want to bring us back to where we started in case you came on while we were going. I really think that August is the second new year. Let me know if you agree in the chat or in the comments around this video. Do you kind of see August as the second new year? Again, this is the first year I just realized we don't have any kids going back to school this fall. Everybody is officially done. We are done with all that. And right now my grandkids are too young to be going to school. So nobody's going back, right? I'm not having to go and buy, a bunch of things for my daughter's dorm room or school supplies and that type of thing. And yet there's kind of this like feeling of something new is starting. And I really think August can be this time in the year. Yay, a new birthday. I love that. A birthday is a great time to have kind of like a fresh start, right? But remember, this isn't January all over again. And this isn't about, man, I feel really bad about the things I said 8 months ago that I didn't actually do anything with. This is about actually pausing to not just set another goal because the calendar is giving us a fresh start. It's saying, okay, I have a new season in front of me, like a new opportunity to faithfully steward what God is entrusting to me now. So instead of saying, I should have been farther by now, or I'll just wait until next year. How do we say, okay, I don't want to let just fall happen to me. I want to pause. I want to seek him. I want to discern what this season is for. I want to decide what deserves my yes, and then design a fruitful or faithful plan to move it forward to see the fruit, right? That's exactly what we're doing. I love that, Melissa, right? No kids going back to school. And yet it still can be kind of like this, okay, as I'm stepping into this next season, what does this look like? So next Tuesday, if you are already a paid member of the Stewardship Circle, we're going to be doing our fall Stewardship Circle retreat. We're going to be pausing before the pace picks up and just carries us through the end of the year. And we're going to decompress, right? Because we've probably, gotten ourselves to some level that we just need to kind of come back, get some perspective. We're going to discern, we're going to decide, and we're going to design. Do you love the D's? Decompress, discern, decide, design. I always like alliterations because it helps me remember things. And you're going to leave knowing what this fall is for, what deserves your yes, what's the one thing that you're going to faithfully move forward, and how are you going to live this out in your real life? Good. I'm glad that you love that, Debbie, because again, it helps us to think intentionally about each step of the process rather than slapping a bunch of things together and hoping something's going to be different this time, right? How many of you have gone into fall saying, this is the fall, I'm not going to let my calendar completely fill up, or I'm not going to, lay down this thing that I know the Lord has put on my heart to move forward. And yet fall after fall after fall, that happens. So if you're already a paid subscriber and a member of the Stewardship Circle, you're invited. You'll be getting an invite soon. If you have not joined us yet, click the subscribe link, upgrade. You're going to get access to the replay. So even if you can't be on live, every single year. Okay, this is the year you're not going to say that anymore, Debbie. All right, no more every single year. This year is going to feel really different. And already, Debbie, you've been hanging around here for a couple of months and look at the shifts that have already happened, right? Look at how you're thinking about your time and how you're approaching what it's time for, whether that's directly related to the business and ministry you're running, or whether that's related to what you're doing with your granddaughter, or whether that's related to what's going on in your community, right? You're already intentionally making decisions. So I can't wait. It's going to be really, really different. Okay. Now, when you come in as an annual member, it's $97. And the retreat recording is going to be sold for $147. So don't overcomplicate it. As an annual subscriber, you get to come to every monthly one that we do. So you'll get to join us on Tuesday. You'll get access to the replay if you can't be there. And really what we're doing is making these decisions from a place of discernment so that then we can do the thing that God has called us to, right? And take this gift of time that he's laying in front of us, these last 4 point whatever months of the year, and saying, Lord, what is it time for? Right? We're not trying to just get more done before December. We want to be more faithful with what God has entrusted to us between now and then, and not get to the end of the year and say, where did the time go? And maybe next year, right? Like, why not see what we can move forward while we can, right? So I would love to hear from you guys. Before you go, what is one thing that you feel like the Lord is laying on your heart that this fall you're wanting to see happen or move forward? And I always like you to connect that why to it. What is the impact of that? What's the difference that's going to make? What is that connected to, right? Sometimes it's, sometimes the doing of it isn't always the fun part, but it's the result of it. It's the way that it impacts someone else, or maybe it impacts what he's called us to. We still have 140 days left of the year. I love that, Debbie. Yes, let's do the math, right? And so many people are already next yearing it, saying, well, it's already almost the fall and then the holidays are right behind that. And we all know how that goes. But women who are stewarding time, we don't do that, because we know that this time is precious and we want to invest it well. So I'm excited for next Tuesday. I've been spending a lot of time on the back end, thinking and praying through what's really going to make this fall different for us as we are approaching it. And I can't wait for you guys to walk away with your fall decision filter, your yes filter. So that way, even after you do make decisions, I guarantee there are going to be other opportunities and other experiences and things like that are going to come. And some of them are going to be yeses. Some of them are going to be the very thing that you should be saying yes to. And some of them, right, may be distracting you from that one thing. And so we're going to really make sure that we know what is your fall yes filter. So that way you have a way to evaluate before everything just starts filling up your fall. 20 weeks, 3,360 hours. Girl, you're my math girl. I used to be a math teacher back in the day. And so oftentimes I'm like, I wonder how long that is, right? I wonder how much time that is. So I love the fact that you were doing that, Debbie, and we may have to share that somewhere. So thanks for sharing that. All right. Well, I'm going to see you guys next Tuesday, as long as you're an annual subscriber. If you're not, make sure that you click on that subscribe buttons and join us as an annual subscriber. Right away, I'm going to give you the Faithful Week framework where you can start thinking about, what do I want my week to look like as I head into fall? This is a great time of year to start reevaluating what gets its place in our week and when in our week. And then we're going to be talking about, okay, and what is that thing that we're moving forward? So I never thought about August being another new year. Yeah, right. Okay, it's okay if you're not sure, right? Here's where I would just say, Militia, start getting curious. Start asking. Start just noticing. What are the things that maybe the Lord has keeps putting on your heart? What are the things that maybe you've had a tendency to put off, or it feels like, gosh, I would love to, but right, the if I had time excuse that we all give. We do have time. I mean, Debbie just told us we have 3,360 hours. So we do have time, right? And the question is, okay, once we discern that and make some decisions around it, now I'm going to help you design a way to move that forward and to start giving that. But it's gonna start with you paying attention. And so I would encourage you, Militia, before Tuesday to start doing that, because I know you're a Stewardship Circle member, and so you'll get to be joining us on Tuesday. Well, I can't wait to see you guys all there. Thanks for being here. I would love, to hear, like, how does this help you think about this time of year a little bit different? Again, not necessarily as a restart, but maybe just as a refresh or coming back to, okay, let me just take this pause. And before, time gets away from me, as so many people do between now and the end of the year, how can I be really intentional about how I'm going to steward it? And what does faithful look like as we move into the end of the year? So I'm excited to see what the Lord does, and I will see you guys soon.